U.S. Highway 222, 422, and 522. Yeah! Alright, the first up, we're going to start with US 222. This is going to be an awesome of US Highway 22's child routes. We're just going to do US Highway 222. US 222 begins on US Highway 1 near Darlington, and then make its final end right near Allentown, Pennsylvania. Darlington, Maryland through Allentown, Pennsylvania. US Highway 222 begins on US Highway 1, so we're going to be concurrent with US Highway 1 as Maryland Highway 222. Oh boy. Now we're splitting off with US Highway 1, so we get a mention for US Highway 40 and Interstate 95. So US 222 is turning left to head into Pennsylvania. And welcome to Pennsylvania. Now we're about to join US Highway 30, signed for York, Harrisburg, Reading, and Philadelphia. Now we're splitting off with US 30. We get US 222 signed for Reading. And we get a mention for Interstate 76. We get US 322. I'm not going to say that. Where's Harrisburg for US Highway 322? We get Interstate 76 signed for Pennsylvania Turnpike and Denver. Not the Denver, Colorado, the Denver, Pennsylvania. Now we're about to join US Highway 422 signed for Reading and Allentown. So we're now going to be concurrent with US Highway 422 eastbound. 222 north is signed for Allentown and Reading. So we can combine US 422 and 522 together. Now we're about to split off with US Highway 422 signed for Pottstown, and we're signed for Allentown. Now we're still signed for Allentown. We get no interchange for Interstate 476. And US Highway 222 just ends. So we get Interstate 78 signed for Harrisburg. Where's New York City? Now let's move on to US Highway 422. Now let's do US Highway 422. Yeah! 422 is from Cleveland. And then from near Hershey, Palmyra, Lebanon, Reading, and then makes its end. I am not going King of Prussia. We get US 422 signed for Pottstown. So let's talk about westbound. And US Highway 422 begins in Wayne, Pennsylvania. You get no interchange for Interstate 276 and Interstate 76. We get Interstate 176 signed for Morgantown, and US 422 is now signed for Reading. Now we're about to join US Highway 222, so we're now going to be concurrent. We get Allentown, Lancaster, and Lebanon. Now we're splitting off with US Highway 222 signed for Lancaster. And we're signed for Lebanon. And we did US Highway 422 over there, right on US Highway 322. Now let's move on to the other side. Here we are now on US Highway 422. We get a mention for US 22 and 219. Here's US Highway 219 and US 22. We get US 119. I am not going to say that. It's time for Blairsville. I am not going to say US Highway 119 northbound. I am not going to say that town. It is a long pronunciation. I'm going to mess this up, so I'm not going to read it. We get Interstate 79 southbound sign for Pittsburgh. Northbound will take you to Erie, Pennsylvania. We get US 19 sign for Mercer, but where's Pittsburgh? And where is US 19 sign for Erie? Here's a look at Interstate 376. I'm so sorry, guys. Leo had to do a final message on his channel where he did this because I have to do this for my own good, not to mess up the towns and mispronounce all of them. So now I'm going to do is get everything back to normal. Here's a look at US Highway 224, signed for Poland, Ohio, and we're signed for Youngstown. Now we're splitting off with Interstate 376. We get a mention for Interstate 80, signed for Sharon. And welcome to Ohio. Here's a look at US Highway 62. Interstate 80 East is signed for New York City. What? We get Interstate 80 westbound signed for No Control City. They should put Cleveland. We get Interstate 480 signed for Cleveland and Toledo. 271 is signed for Columbus, and it's signed for Erie, Pennsylvania. Alright. Now we're splitting off with Interstate 271. Here's a look at Interstate 77. And we get a mention for Interstate 71 and Interstate 90. We get Interstate 90. We'll head into Toledo and Erie, Pennsylvania. And US 422 ends. So we're now going to move on. US Highway 522. Yeah, here we go with US Highway 522. Oh boy. It's from Powhatan, Virginia, right near US 60. It's from, and it goes into Culper, Winchester, Front Royal, Hancock, Maryland, Lewistown, and it will make its end in Sunbury and Selinsgrove on US 11 and 15. US 522 begins right on US 60, and we get Winchester for 143 miles. That was our primary. Here's a look at the James River in Virginia. Here's a look at US Highway 250. Interstate 64 eastbound is signed for Richmond. 64 westbound will take you to Charleston, West Virginia. Now we're going to be concurrent with US Highway 33. Now we're going to split off with US Highway 33, while US Highway 522 will head into Winchester. And we'll head into Culper and Front Royal. We get a mention for US 29 and 15, both signed. US 29 signed for Washington and Charlottesville, and we're signed for Culper. Now we're going to be concurrent with US Highway 211. Now we're about to split off with US Highway 211, while US 522 heading to Winchester. Now we're going to be concurrent with US Highway 340, and we get a mention for Interstate 66. We get Interstate 66 time for Stairsburg and Washington, D.C. Now US 340 is leaving us, so now we're going to be concurrent with US 17 and 50. Now we are concurrent with US 17 and 50. So we get Interstate 81 signed for Roanoke. Martinsburg should not be signed. You can put Harrisburg. Now US 11 is about to join us. US 50 is splitting off and US 17 ends. So US 11 and 522 would continue. Now we're splitting off with US 11. US 522 is turning left. And we're just going to enter into West Virginia. And welcome to Maryland. We get Interstate 70 and US 40 both signed for Hagerstown. So we're about to be concurrent with Interstate 68 westbound, US 40 westbound, Interstate 70 westbound, And US 522 northbound signed for Cumberland and Breezewood. Now US 40 is splitting off with it'll join Interstate 68 for Cumberland, and we're signed for Breezewood, Pennsylvania. And welcome to Pennsylvania. Now we're leaving US Interstate 70, and we're signed for Warfordsburg. Here's a look at US 30, signed for Chambersburg. We get Pennsylvania Turnpike, and we get a mention for Interstate 76. And we're going to be concurrent with US Highway 22. Now we're going to be concurrent with US Highway 322 for Harrisburg and Selinsgrove. And US 322 westbound is signed for State College. So we're about to join the mothership of 22s. Now we're splitting off with US Highway 22 and 322. They'll head into Harrisburg. And we're signed for Walnut Street. This should have been Selinsgrove for US 522. And US Highway 522 ends on US 1115. So that is it for US Highway 222, 422, and 522. This will be published by Thursday with US Highway 22. So thank you all for watching, and peace out.